Hello and welcome to Quick Take TA here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is May 7th, 2024, and we can see that Bitcoin here on the daily has put in another lower high. So this is a confirmed swing high and closing high, and it is another lower high. But this does provide for some potential opportunities coming into the future here, as Bitcoin is playing between overhead resistance here at this $65,000 April of 2021 monthly swing high and the daily upper first standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands, which is coming in right at that 65.5 wick high now. Now to the downside, we can see that support is coming in right here at the lower first at the October of 2021 monthly close at 61,350. You're probably pretty familiar with these ranges if you've been watching my streams or any of the recorded videos in the past here. So if Bitcoin can try to find a higher low anywhere above this prior low, there would potentially be some bullish divergence. I would say that for regular bullish divergence, you'd probably want to see it come from one of these lows over here. That is where Bitcoin would make a lower low, which is only really possible in relation to some of these lows up here. This coming in from the 22nd of March. We've got one coming in from the 3rd of April here as well. So Bitcoin would put in a lower low in relation to those, but we can take a look at RSI and see if there would be the potential for a higher low if Bitcoin did put in a higher low somewhere around this support zone. Now this support zone, I would give it some room between 61,350. If that area is dropped, I would start looking down to the lower first, somewhere around this prior low. And that's coming in at around 59 to 59.2 to that March of 2021 monthly and quarterly closing high, which is coming in at 58.8. Anywhere below there, Bitcoin's likely running this low again, either swinging it or breaking down from it, in which case we would be marking down our potential targets to the September of 2021 weekly swing high. That's coming in at $53,000 to the closes over here from August and December, which are coming in at 50,800 and 51.8 respectively. If Bitcoin did initiate an expansive move, it would have to start closing below the lower second standard deviation and lose this prior lower low, which is coming in at 56,500. If it didn't just swing it, then I would be looking for further expansion down to this area, and I would give it room between $50,000 and $53,000 here. Now, if Bitcoin does hang out above these two monthly closing areas, that being the October monthly close and the March, and that is a quarterly there from March close in this case, between 58.8 and 61,350, we can actually look at the potential for some bullish divergence forming within this actual range, and that is where you would want to see it come from. So in this case, we can mark this low, and we can mark this low here, and we can mark this low here, and just see if they are in an area of interest for a possible bullish divergence if Bitcoin did put in a low sometime in the next few days. So we can see that this area here, well, we would have to see a lower low from that 19th of February. Is that 19th of February or 19th of March? Sorry. That one's not really relevant, so we can get rid of that one. We can see that if Bitcoin put in a low right here, right now, it would not be relevant for this guy here. That's coming in from the 22nd of March. So the only real place to put in a potential bullish divergence right now would be, nope, actually it did lose this low as well. So we do have to look over one more, and we can mark this guy here. I forget where that low is coming in. This is from the 17th of April. So it's not in a position currently unless this low is dropped on the actual closing structure for price, and then it can maintain above around a 38 to 39 read on RSI, then we could potentially see a bullish divergence form within this range. Otherwise, the only way that we're going to see regular bullish divergence in this case form is if we see it come off of a lower low on price action and a higher low on RSI. So it wouldn't be within the range. It would actually be coming from any lower low price action than this low right here, coming in at that 56,500 with the close open coming in at 58,265. So that is something to keep in mind. If it does swing down into this support zone between 58.8, that lower second, and the lower first here around 61,350, and set a low that is slightly lower than this closing low here at around that 61,300 area, and start to actually put in a low, not just a swing low, but a closing low, then we could see potential bullish divergence for me. And that is what you want to see for this to resolve in what many are calling a bull flag manner. Otherwise, the only other way that you're going to see that outside of the historical bullish divergences or hidden bull divs, which are all coming from this $50,000 area, it would have to make lower lows. So just keep that in mind as we kind of review a few other things of interest here. So if Bitcoin does play that out, you basically need to see it holding up around $59,000 by this lower second. That is really kind of the line in the sand for price action as it stands right now. If we do see any daily closures below there, it's either already running or will run this this previous low zone. Any closes below there, then we start looking at those further downside targets that we just discussed a little earlier. Now, if Bitcoin can recover back above the basis band, however, that is coming in at $63,000. That does bring this local high structure into play. And the trend break is now this wick high from Monday, which is coming in at 65.5. So if price does push above 65.5, I would be quickly looking right to this 67,200 to 300 area by the upper second standard deviation. If we did see Bitcoin recover above there and, a 4 or 6 hour candle below the daily and or a daily close, I would be looking for price to play up to the prior cycle high here at $69,000. And then of course above there, we would be looking at expansion above a resistance zone. You can see that Bitcoin sat on this zone and got wicked off of this zone quite a bit already. So that would be above that overhead resistance with an expansive posture by closing above the upper second standard deviation. And then I would be looking somewhere around the $70,000 to $73,000 zone right here at these two highs. And then of course the all-time high above it around 73,835. And quickly above there, I'd be looking 75 to 78, 78 to 80, and of course mid to low 80s from there. Now, what is the momentum picture looking like on this particular downtrend? Well, at the moment, it is currently pointed up here on the daily. We do see that the pivot for momentum is at the $60,800 level. So, Bitcoin could very easily test down a bit further, and it's still looking okay from the momentum perspective. But if it starts to drop around 61, in my estimation, we would start to see this turn. This would be a bearish reset of momentum and likely a rejection of the bullish control zone. Now, this is a regular stochastic, not a Stoch RSI. So this is measuring close over close price action. And in this case, it is lagging a little bit because it is running a 6.3, 14,255 look back. Now, that would begin to provide additional pressure down, though, if you did see this momentum shift. We do see we still have not green DMI, red DMI even, which is indicating that, we are seeing more pressure to the downside. And after putting in a high like this, if Bitcoin does fail here and start to break down below into this support zone, very, very likely that it retests the lows. And, I would give it some room. It's not a death sentence if it comes down and retests the lows or swings below that monthly, quarterly again. But closing any daily and higher term timeframes isn't going to look good, that's for sure. Now, when looking at the volatility of this particular range using BBWP, which you can find on the Landy Bands indicator in the video link in the description down below, that is the bands here. It also has a bunch of other features, including an on-chart BBWP or volatility metric. We can see the volatility even is flat. So that is what's providing for this kind of range setup when looking at the bands. So to the downside, at extremes, 59,100 to 200, that area is dropped. We're looking at expansion to go test that low and lower. Very likely. And then, of course, above the upper second, we're looking for it to test $69,000 to the highs. Excuse me, very likely. So we can go out another time frame here. We did see a 2-day closure. So a 2-day close open. This has not resulted in any kind of a high structure just yet. You will see that this has painted a swing high. Not yet a closing high. We need to see at least this additional 2-day candle close below the open, the open even at $64,000. So if it does do that, then we are looking at another lower high, not only confirmed on the swing, but then it would confirm on the close. And we can see that the lower first standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands is right here, right at that monthly support, right around that 61.5, 61,350 area. If that's dropped, you can see the lower second coming right into that support there from March of 2021 at that 58.8, which is that monthly and quarterly close. Below there, we'd be looking somewhere around that lower third, which would be a swing of the lows. Anywhere below there, we'd be looking for expansion down to that 50 to 53. To the upside, you can see that Bitcoin has been rejecting the basis band on this particular downtrend. And if it does regain it, that would be a very good sign that Bitcoin is going to go back and retest not only this 67,200 to 300 lower high, but likely to go and test further up to around $68,000 to $69,000 here by the upper first and the prior cycle high, respectively. Above there, the upper second, around these highs, 70 to 73. And then, of course, anywhere above there, we're looking for an all-time high run and higher by that upper third standard deviation. So something to be aware of here is the momentum outlook here. We do see that this is all coming in the context of a cool down as it stands right now. We did get a bit of a pop-up in volatility on the initial move down, the expansive move down, but it's kind of petered out at this point. So again, more of a range look as it stands right now. But we do see a momentum shift here on the 2-day. So any closes on the next 2-day candle above around 60,400 are looking just fine to keep that momentum pointed to the upside. And I would be expecting Bitcoin to try and test up if that is going to be the case. Now, the 3-day is going to be closing with today's daily candles. So be aware of this. We do have initial expansion to the downside, but a rejection of the lower second and lower third area and a close inside that quarterly and monthly area there from March of 2021 at 58.8. Nice close open just above it. This would look much better if we can see this start to regain at minimum the lower first standard deviation. That's coming in at $63,040. I would actually give that some room if Bitcoin does rise. You want to see it closing above around 63,200, because if Bitcoin does start to rise towards this, this will slightly adjust in between the closes here. If it does close above there, it's very likely that Bitcoin will be testing up somewhere around the deeper $64,000 to $65,000 area, maybe even testing this high here, which would be the lower high on the daily now that needs to be beat to change the downtrending structure on the daily. If it can do that, I would mark up, of course, to the basis, which is coming in slightly above there. That's right around 66,350. And then above there, not too far to be looking for that last lower high here on the 3-day at that 67,200 to 300 area. Above there, looking right up to $69,000 to slightly above at $70,000 at the upper first. And then, of course, above there, the highs again, somewhere around that $70,000 to $73,000. If we did start to see a breakout on expansion, it does need, of course, close above 73,835, and then we can start looking at 75 to 78, 78 to 80. And then mid to low 80s from there. And then we, of course, would revisit this as I do stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then, of course, have the 2 recorded videos on Tuesday and Thursday after close. So, looking pretty good. If it can start recovering, at minimum, the start would come on any close today above around 63,200 is what I would say. You do want to see it maintain that, of course, through the next 3-day closure. Now, when looking at the momentum outlook here, we can see that Bitcoin needs to close above 63,800 in order to avoid an initial cross back down on the Stochastic momentum indicator here. So, do be aware of that, because it is in an expansive phase. It is below or in the weak half of the bands here that It's got some work to do. If it starts getting back above, the lower first, it's probably going to be testing that pivot today anyway. What you don't want to see is further continuation today into the close to the downside here, as that would start to paint a more bearish picture on the 3-day. The 4-day is going to be closing, or no, it just opened. And this is actually pretty encouraging. This is where, I am a little bit more bullish on the longer term timeframes, of course, than the shorter term timeframes. Bitcoin, of course, is hanging out between support and resistance right now, so it's probably going to bore the shit out of everyone. But in this case, the lower first standard deviation is a good candidate, if I can get the words out correctly here, for a test. And that just happens to be right around 60,800 to 900, just below this 61,350 October monthly close. So this candle just opened today, and you can see that we had beautiful expansion to the upside, and now we've got this sideways consolidation, and we see the compression phase. So even if Bitcoin does move down further, you can see the lower second standard deviation is coming in line with the wick low right now. So a retest of the lows, not out of the question. And typically when you see a compression phase like this, a retest is usually going to be an area that gets picked up. Now, that's, of course, not financial advice. Do your own research and back testing and all that stuff. But usually when you go from expansion to compression, the way that you read this is, unless it's closing below the lower second is a likely reversal candidate zone, at least in the lower term timeframes than the time frame you're referencing. So in this case, the 4-day, so the 3-day, 2-day, daily, 12-hour, and maybe if it's only, it could only be a bounce for some of the in between timeframes between the daily closes, like a 4 or 6 hour, right? But at that, probably going to see some good action down there. We did see good volume coming in on that candle as it is. So likely candidate if Bitcoin drops the lower first and of course loses. Now the lower first is at that October monthly at 61,350. And then of course it would have to lose 58.8 at the monthly and quarterly here from March of 2021 to even go test that area again. And if it did, likely good for at minimum a lower term time frame bounce. However, if we did see any closures below it, that would indicate expansion to the downside, initiating targets further down to that $53,000 to $50,000 area. You can see the lower third standard deviation is currently coming in that zone right now. To the upside, back above the basis, right around 65 to 65.5, which was the last daily lower high now from Monday. Then we would be on the 4-day chart looking up to around that $69,000 to $70,000 by the upper first standard deviation. Above there, we would be looking right back to the highs, right around the all-time high, maybe even a run past it. But what I want to note here is the 4-day is telling me that this is not ready to resolve itself just yet. And we could see fake outs to the downside and or the upside before it's actually really ready to go into an expansive phase again. So keep that in mind and understand the context behind that. During the next 4-day candle here that we're currently in, we can see that the momentum pivot is right there, right around the Monday high. It's a little bit above to be fair, but 65,650 is the number to beat to the upside for this current 4-day period. So that is something that I will be watching, and I do suggest that you keep an eye on throughout the rest of this week coming into the weekend, as today is Tuesday, so we'd be looking at Saturday on the closure. And in this case, I am cautiously optimistic on this structure on the 4-day. Even the 3-day, we do tend to see in bull markets, this is anecdotal, as I'm not going to go through and do the back testing right now. It would take a little bit too long for this type of a video, but typically you will see it start to do the expansion to the downside, but when it expands into support and holds it, you usually see it run the other way. Now, it can take some time and keep retesting, so be aware of that as well. I don't think this is ready to resolve anytime this week or even next week, quite honestly, in the way that it's painting right now. That could change by the end of the week. We'll, of course, follow up with this in tomorrow's live stream, and then, of course, in a recorded video on Thursday. And that's going to do it for today. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening. No matter where you are in the world, please trade safe. And, of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that said, Landy out.